Now, to preface this entire video, I made this section before I researched a whole lot. I generally knew what to look up, but I kind of just wanted to get a part of it done so that I knew that this would eventually get, in fact, done. I have an audiobook in the works, The Khrushchevites by Enver Hoxha, but I kind of just want to get some small stuff done. My friend's mother told me, if I don't get upload, people are not going to see it, so, I gotta get something done at least before I get the huge, big stuff done. See you in about an hour.
About something AOC said over the weekend that you probably heard in an interview.
I have a local city councilman that has this saying woke one was crazy.
You briefly supported the idea of defunding the police.
Well, I think that during this time and especially during COVID, there was a huge opening of the Overton window. We were shut down. There was some of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen because of those shutdowns. Yeah. And I think that the doors were really open in trying to entertain any and every policy that was going to get us to a better place.
Do you think woke one was crazy?
Look, I think that each person has a responsibility to tell New Yorkers, to tell Americans when they're running for office what they believe. And sometimes what you believe can change, it can develop, it can grow. And I know that there are some for whom they still believe in that. I've made very clear that I do not believe in defunding the police, that I will not be defunding the police. And that to me, delivering critical public safety also looks like working with our police department alongside many other partners, and we've seen over the first 7 months of this administration what that can look like when we're talking about the fewest murders on record in New York City, the fewest shooting incidents on record in New York City, and that to me is how we measure a lot of our public safety.
I ask you,
You probably seen that clip before. It's essentially Zoran and AOC acting like the policies they supported in 2020 were a crazy party, were a wild party. Hey, you remember that party last night where I've never been invited to parties, so I don't know what happens in parties, but I assume it's crazy, kind of like woke one. But anyways, You've probably seen that clip before. And it brings out a wonderful point that any principled Marxist, even some revisionists have been bringing up for years. The idea of democratic socialism, the idea that we can't the fact that we can't just reform the system to oblivion. We kind of have to do our own thing. We have to separate from the Democratic Party. And it's an example of why opportunism does not work. Now, what is opportunism? Well, wherever Marxism is popular among the masses, this political trend, this bourgeois labor party will swear by the name of Marx. It cannot be prohibited from doing this, just as a trading firm cannot be prohibited from using any particular label, sign, or advertisement. It has always been the case in history that after the death of revolutionary leaders who were popular among the oppressed classes, their enemies have attempted to appropriate their names so as to deceive the oppressed classes. This is essentially what AOC's brand of democratic socialism is. It's opportunist to its core, and what opportunism means, I meant to describe it, I meant to define it, but opportunism is essentially sacrificing the larger movement for right now, right? Sacrificing the future for right now. God, that was such a terrible explanation. It's essentially sacrificing the greater movement for in-the-moment gain. It's shaking hands with a party, organization, or person whose interests are completely and utterly irreconcilable with yours for temporary gain. Now, before we get into the historical reasons behind why opportunism is such a dangerous thing, why the modern left is in a terrible position, even if it seems to be the most radical it's ever been, let's talk about the origins of woke one and all the stuff surrounding this. and also the stuff I got into last video with Graham Plattner and whatnot. Now, the DSA has a total of 83 candidates currently in office right now. 83. And what change have they done? Well, let's get into that. Zoran couldn't tax the rich. He couldn't arrest Netanyahu, and he most certainly will work with the police. As we have seen previously, just scroll back a little bit on the video if you want proof of that. That's him saying it directly. But he was all around a failure as a communist. If he's a better communist than I am, as I have seen some people say indirectly to me, then I need to lock the fuck in. Most of the people in DSA are just liberals trying to get elected, trying to look cooler to people. The DSA is essentially a way for these liberals to look like edgy rebels, right? Like how Graham Plattner wasn't even slightly a socialist. He wasn't a communist. He was just a liberal. His Wikipedia page lists him as a liberal. And he was a Blackwater mercenary. He killed children and doesn't regret it. In fact, bragged about it, posting it on his fridge saying, "Oh my god." People get so upset at that. This is all public information. You can look it up right now. This is all public information. Graham Plattner did this. Most people, like Will Lawrence, were just libs trying to get elected. As I said previously, the DSA isn't a democratic socialist organization. It's just the third head of the dual party system. It's just an extension of the Democratic Party. It's like what Lenin said. Wherever Marxism is popular among the workers, this political trend, this bourgeois labor party will swear by the name of Marx. It cannot be prohibited from doing this, just as a trading firm cannot be prohibited from using any particular label, sign, or advertisement. It has always been the case in history that after the death of the revolutionary leaders who were popular among the oppressed classes, their enemies will have attempted to appropriate their names so as to deceive the oppressed classes. This is the Democratic Party's way of pretending to be the Marxist Party without actually pissing anybody off, without pissing any of the right-wingers in the Democratic Party off. And there's even an org that pretty much directly connects the Democratic Party to the DSA, with all of its members being active members of the Democratic Party and basically helping people like Bernie and Soron get elected. It's pretty damning shit, okay? It's damning shit. And, if you want to reform the Democratic Party, you can't, but you probably shouldn't be using the Democratic Party to reform the Democratic Party. You shouldn't be using Democratic Party candidates to do this, which that means it's basically impossible to reform the Democratic Party. Is it not? And think about back in 2016 when Bernie Sanders had the ability to become president, but they just didn't choose him. Instead chose to go for Hillary Clinton. This is proof that we don't choose the candidates. They do. So why would we be voting for the candidates that they give us out of a promise that eventually we will establish the dictatorship of the proletariat through the Democratic Party? Even though they choose the candidates, they decide what they want to do, and they just basically do whatever the fuck they want to do, right? As long as it doesn't affect the bourgeoisie. So trying to reform the Democratic Party doesn't make any sense when you have no power within the Democratic Party. And anyone who tells you this is a liar, which segues perfectly into the next part. Oh boy. Now, Socialism for All has about 1,000 different videos on Hassan Piker, and all of which you should go check out, like right now, if you still think he's a radical democratic socialist. Hassan Piker positions himself as the authority in the room, as a leftist, as the most radical person on earth. He proclaimed himself a communist a while ago, but then, stepped back on that, as shown in the S4A video. He even tried to argue why we should work within the Democratic Party. Yeah, I forgot to include this a little bit, but yeah, he tried using Lenin. He used Lenin to argue this point, which is incredibly stupid, which, as I previously stated, is impossible. Again, also from an S4A video. I used to watch Hassan Piker. There's really not much to be said here, but he has millions of dollars. He gets paid so much, and he has actively promoted bourgeois politicians and then walked it back and lied about his positions, even though they are live. They exist. We can go back and see what he said previously and how it contradicts what he's saying now. The question is, what are the long-term effects if we continue down the path we continue down? Well, let me tell you about another revolution that's not the October one that happened around the same time. A revolution that happened in 1918 and ended in 1919. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is the story of how the Nazis rose to power. Yeah, it goes there. It goes there. The seeds of Hitler's victory were sown in 1918. The German workers had overthrown the old state and power was in their grasp, but the workers' and soldiers' councils were for a short period the strongest power throughout the country. The bourgeoisie and the old militarist class were unable to offer any resistance. All the conditions were present for building an impregnable Soviet republic, save that no revolutionary party existed to lead the workers. The strength of the proletariat at the beginning of the revolution, before social democracy, had squandered and destroyed that strength, as attested by the principal social democratic witness. The military collapse brought the whole power of the state into the hands of the proletariat at one stroke. In November 1918, the revolution was the work of the proletariat alone. The proletariat won so all-powerful position that the bourgeoisie elements first did not dare to attempt any resistance. How was this absolute power of the proletariat turned in 15 years into its exact opposite, into the absolute power of the bourgeoisie and militarist class and the absolute subjugation of the proletariat? The answer to this question is comprised of two words: social democracy. The honest truth is that Hitler's rise to power could have easily been prevented had the workers destroyed the machinery of the state, which Lenin talks about in the State Revolution. He talks about how the Paris Commune refused to destroy the state machinery and how they got their revolution destroyed. Same thing with what the workers essentially did was they gave the Social Democrats the wheel, like what we're doing right now in America. They allowed the Social Democrats to control the movement. Hitler's rise wasn't just a single guy powering his way throughout the system. It was a result of the system essentially trying to preserve itself. In reality, Hitler was not popular at all. He was very unpopular. The worst part is this ended up, in the long term, bringing about the end of the communist movement. A bunch of reforms were going to be made to prevent somebody like Khrushchev from coming to power, but they couldn't put the reforms in time, which allowed for a coup to take place, for Khrushchev to essentially surround the Kremlin and take power. One of the parts of said reforms would have made the USSR a little bit more quote-unquote democratic by allowing people who are not directly in the party to run for election, though they still had to be a communist, obviously, because, are you seriously going to allow a racist to run in a country that's meant to be democratic and stay democratic? Are you stupid or something? Why? And then the question is, how would this hypothetical person even exist anyways? Holy shit. That's besides the point. Let's continue. Now, the Social Democrats allied with the old monarchist general staff, and created the Weimar Republic, which was on paper the most democratic country in the world, the freest democracy ever. But we all know how that ended up, right? Anyways, what they essentially did was they repressed people, they committed genocide. It was essentially Nazi Germany before Nazi Germany was created. Because what fascism does is it uses the stuff that already exists, uses the colonialism, the genocide, the racism, all that stuff, and it bumps it up to 100. It's not like it didn't already exist. It's just more intense now. It's just thrown off any facade and is now baring its teeth openly. Fascism is a response to the left, a response to a possible revolution, a response to a possible socialist republic being made violently. It seeks to suppress the revolution, and one of the ways it does it is through reformism. Essentially, what they did was they fooled the workers into just voting, into channeling everything into voting, into the lesser evil, into democratic socialism, into all this stuff. Here's a nice little paragraph from the book that I am taking all this from, Fascism and Social Revolution, that goes over how Nazism was very unpopular, how the communists were winning the election. Hitler was put into office anyways as a chancellor. He was essentially handed power by the Social Democrats while they were preparing the dictatorship. They distracted the workers with the ideas, the hopes of reform, with the ideas of democratic socialism. I want you to take a look at this sentence and tell me this does not sound exactly like democratic socialism. But the subsequent stabilization period and the widespread promises of social democracy, of a new era of organized capitalism and economic democracy, led to new hopes in social democracy and the dream of the peaceful, reformist, democratic path of socialism. And I'm sure that we all know the rest, but I'd like to end this section with reading the last paragraph in the Germany section of Fascism and Social Revolution. History has produced in the two great post-war revolutions, the Russian Revolution and the German Revolution, the gigantic demonstration of the two main paths or epoch and where they lead. The Russian October Revolution and the German November Revolution occurred within 12 months of each other, but they followed divergent paths. The one followed the path of the proletarian dictatorship of the Communist International. The other followed the path of the bourgeois democracy of the Second International. The theoretical expression of the divergence was in the controversy at the time of Kautsky and Lenin. Today, a decade and a half later, we can see that where the two paths have led. The path of the proletarian dictatorship of Lenin of the Communist International has led to ever greater strengthening of the workers and the triumph and building of socialism. The path of bourgeois democracy of Kautsky of the Second International has led to the victory of fascism. Of course, the Soviet Union would eventually take Berlin. But let's talk about that other revolution, the October Revolution. What did Lenin do? How did the Soviet Union not face the same fate? Well, to tell you the truth, the story of the German Workers' Revolution and the Soviet October Revolution is a tale of two completely different paths to Marxism. Whereas one has been historically proven to work, the other one, death. It's death. As I previously demonstrated, the Democratic Party is not a party you can do anything in. It's not a Democratic Party. We don't decide what happens in the Democratic Party. And we never do. I will probably be talking about the DSA more in a minute because I did find out some more stuff. But the thing is, Lenin was successful because he took power. He allowed the workers to take power. They smashed the state machinery. They destroyed the old Russian government. even if in the long term it wasn't successful, this is a basis for what hopefully will be our revolution, the American workers' revolution, and will hopefully establish a new Soviet Union in America and lead to the final victory of the dictatorship of the proletariat over the bourgeoisie, to where we don't need to discuss this exact thing in the future. Of course, other parties, other so-called revolutionary orgs definitely endorse DSA candidates, even as they betray them, even as they explicitly say they only use the DSA to get elected. There's a trillion examples, and if I were to give all of them, we would be here all day. But I want to talk about Geese Magazine and all of these other orgs. They all, including this one that I have on screen right now, support voting Democrat. They essentially divert any revolutionary energy into what amounts to basically just voting Democrat again. It's just voting Democrat, but under a revolutionary, under a LARPing revolution. Essentially what Geese Magazine does in this article, you can go read for yourself, or watch spooky, scary socialists react to it, I guess. What Geese Magazine essentially does is they basically say we need black liberation, but also vote for this senator because they're somehow going to achieve that. It's a contradictory mess, and it's just crazy. Just like the Social Democrats in Germany, here is Hassan Piker, a democratic socialist or a social democrat, on a call, on a stream with Sargon of Akkad and Nick Fuentes, two open, frequent fascists. It's the complete opposite of Marxism, the complete opposite of the values that Hassan Piker pretends to hold, while people, thanks to the ideas that these guys help normalize, the fascism that they helped to build, while people die due to the rot they endorse, essentially, while people get shot to death in the streets, taken away to who knows where, disappeared completely thanks to ICE, while people starve, while horrors beyond what I can even say here occurs. These people are, this man, Hassan Piker, and his ilk, are talking with and being friends with, being buddy-buddy with the very people that he claims to fight, that he claims to want to fight. They are not your friends. The modern left is right-wing, and I think we all need to accept that and start building an actual left. Social democracy is objectively the moderate wing of fascism. Joseph Stalin said this, I don't remember when, but he said this a while ago and has been vindicated ever since. It's time we accept the fact that there's nobody except us who can help us, that we can't rely on the bourgeois politicians, that we're essentially on our own. And once we accept that, we can finally build a party which isn't the Democrats, which doesn't aim to win elections, but instead to stand right beside the protests and the workers as they fight for more rights. A party which instead of just merely accepting the concessions, uses those concessions to agitate, to build more revolutionary energy instead of expelling it into a single fucking election. A party for the masses. A party which represents the future of the world, not just the American or individual nation's working class, because the truth is, the working people have no nation. There is no way to reform the system there's only revolution. Marx, when he said workers of the world unite, did not mean unite at the ballot box. He meant unite in arms together with the guidance of a communist party to fight for a society where a majority of people are the ruling class. A society that sounds almost utopic to some, but has been proven to be possible.